Good afternoon. My name is Tina Fenton, and this is my project, The Creation and Recreation of Venus. And so I'll be analyzing two different artists, both in different time periods, one of which it was inspired by the first and original painting or painter. So we shall begin. This is the agenda. Overview. We'll be discussing Titian and Manet. Description of paintings. We'll be discussing Venus Urbino and Olympia. We'll be comparing and contrasting. We'll be looking at some historical and cultural contexts and looking at representation of women in each time frame. And at the end, there are some cited sources of where I got most of my resources from. So let's begin. Titian. He was a leading artist in Venice and was known as one of the greatest painters of the Italian Renaissance. He was the oldest of 4 children and became an artist's apprentice as a teenager. He began to work on his first major commission for a church called Santa Maria Gloriosa, afterwards completing the worship of Venice. Titian cultivated a broad range of royal patrons during his career, befriending writer Pietro and sculptor-architect Jacopo helped to propel his art. Titian created portraits for Pope Paul III and religious and mythical pieces for Spain's Philip II, Venus and Adonis, and a piece inspired by Metamorphosis. Titian later died of a plague, leaving a legacy of works inspired by countless generations of artists. Let's look at Monet. He became a lover of painting at a young age and went to art school and studied the old masters in Europe. At age 18, he began studying under Thomas Couture. After 6 years as a student, he opened his art studio. He began to explore his various styles that included realism and impressionistic. His art was composed of everyday subjects such as singers, street people, gypsies, and beggars. Monet's most famous work includes The Luncheon on the Grass in Olympia, which was inspired by Titian's Venus of Urbino. Monet led the French transition from realism to Impressionism. By the time of his death in 1883, he was a respected revolutionary artist. Now let's take a look at some of the paintings. Titian's Venus of Urbino. So the subject matter. This image depicts a woman in her sensuality. It shows a young woman reclining on a bed, nude in the lavish setting of the Renaissance palace. The artistic style. This image is more crisp and sharp styled using more profound colors such as the distinct red. It depicts naturalism, displaying the woman in her most pure form, as well as surrealism, creating an image of a woman that does not capture all figures of women. Let's take a look at Monet's Olympia. This subject matter. This image depicts a reclining nude woman as well, tended to by a maid with a black cat. To your far right, if you can see in the corner, there's a cat looking at you, gazing mysteriously out at the viewer. The maid is presenting Olympia with a gift of flowers. Artistic style. The brush style is more blurred with stronger brush strokes, as in contrast to Venus of Urbino. The colors are less vibrant and the woman very pale in comparison to Venus. Now let's take a look at some historical and cultural context. Venus of Urbino. Renaissance began around the 1300s. Then Europe arose from the stagnation of the Middle Ages and experienced a time of financial growth. Renaissance was in an age which artistic, social, scientific, and political thought turned in new directions. A new style of art and writing spread to the Netherlands, France, Germany, and England. Early writers and artists created their works in Italy due to the war. Values that shaped the Renaissance. Celebration of the individual. Artists and writers became more famous. Love of classical learning. Renaissance scholars loved the writings of ancient Greece and Rome. Enjoyment of worldly pleasures. Renaissance humanists suggest that a person might love and enjoy life without offending God. Some more history. Olympia. The 19th century political was unstable in France. The urban populations of Paris and other large cities were the target of popular prints and newspaper caricatures. The Salon was the major exhibition venue in the 19th century. It was the only place where professional artists had access to a large audience. Realist art was more than a depiction of appearances. It focused on specific facts of modern life. Didn't deal with general principles of existence. It focused on specific facts of modern life. It called the spectator to see without prejudice. All realist artists, although different, had the same objective: to question schemes and conventions and display their own view of the present. Now let's take a look at some women represented in time. Manet painted a woman of his time, but not the ideal woman, a real woman. A Cartesian, someone who was considered a prostitute. He was painting what he saw in everyday life of seeing a white woman with a black woman servant. Women represented in time continued. Titian displayed a woman who was a symbol of marriage and sensuality. It reminded the woman of her marital obligations to her husband. The eroticism of the painting represents Venus, the goddess of love, as a sensual and delectable woman captivating her audience. Some cited sources and links are below. I hope you learned as much as I did, and if you would like to indulge more in the various arts, the links will take you directly to resources that I found information from. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.